Can everybody hear me? Good afternoon. Happy Thursday. So glad to see more faces this month. It's just going to start picking up. Our attendance continues to grow and this COVID situation stays like it is. We've got a great program today. I'm so excited about it. First of all, let's just stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance. And then we'll talk about announcements. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Just a couple of announcements that I want to share. I don't know if any of you, I know a lot of you did because I saw you at the DMBA convention in Fort Worth. It was a great conference and high energy. And one of my old customers called me this morning. She said, "Take my tail away." There was so much energy in the room. So the point I'm trying to say is we've got a symposium coming up. The TMBA does as well. And it's going to be in Plano. So highly encourage y'all to go on the webpage if you're not involved and sign up. It's an educational seminar. We've got some great programs. I'm on the committee, so I'm part of this committee. So had to do that. There was something, I wanted to talk to you quickly about the membership. Starting in October, if you renew your membership or join or sponsorship, that will continue on through the year 22. So y'all want to go ahead and get it done and get it under this year's budget. Just keep that in the back of your mind that we will continue your membership on for next year. And I welcome all the new members and the new attendees that are here today. Could you stand up so we can welcome you and say hi? I know it's going to embarrass y'all. Thank y'all for coming. And hope to see you again next month. I'm going to go ahead and ask Hannah to come up here and introduce our panel.
Okay, well, there are bios on the tables so that you guys can read about these gentlemen at your leisure. But I will go ahead and let you guys know who's here. First of all, we have our very own esteemed Mark Bond moderating, and Mark Bond and Co. Sure. And we also have, let's go over here. We've got Ron Box of Box and Associates. His nickname is Papa. And we have Alan Gardiner of Gardiner Real Estate Appraisal and Consulting, and Joe Goodrich of Goodrich Realty Consulting. So welcome, guys. We're excited to have you here. Oh, and we're also live streaming so we've got some people who are joining virtually. So they might send in some questions. We're going to leave a little time at the end for questions if anybody has them. And I'll hand it off to Mark.
All right, guys, thank you very much. We had a good time hashing out some of these questions, and we'll go over some what we think are popular questions and have some time here for the audience. But before we did that, I wanted to announce the newest member of Mark Bond and Company right here. Should stand up. And I would say she's probably the prettiest, the smartest appraiser I've ever hired, but that would be inappropriate for an employer. As her father, I can say that. Okay, on our panel here, we probably have a combined 150 to 200 years of experience. And not to think that we're old, but we do have experience. Okay, first question, guys. Appraisers are in a shortage. Lenders and ANCs are trying to hire new appraisers. They're enticing us with higher fees. They call us up and beg us to take orders and offering other incentives. So what do you consider before you accept a new client? And do you make a difference between a lender and an ANC? Open range here, guys. Everybody's got their own mind.
Do you keep a list of those? I'm not like it. Anytime we get somebody new calling you or get a new assignment in, what we typically look at first is it a regular client, a client that we've been getting work for the last year or two or three, whatever it may be. And then we try to look at where our volume is and how far we're out, as far as whether we're out 10 days, 2 weeks, or whatever. From that point, we go to where the property is located and see if it's within our regular market area, and then try to make a decision. Right now, we are very blessed in being as busy as we are, and we typically are not pushing to take over new work from somebody that might be sending that order out to 15 or 20 other different appraisers.
Anybody else? Rob, you got anything from the prime lending, the lender perspective?
Thanks. What we've kind of noticed is that,
Pretty close.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We have, specific appraisers in specific markets that we like to work with. But what we've noticed is those particular appraisers are communicating back that used to be, they would get 6 or 7 orders a week. And they kind of pick the ones that they wanted to work on, but now they're getting 20 a day. So it's really hard for them to keep up. And so sometimes are just longer. We reach out to new appraisers and see if we can onboard them, but it's kind of it's a challenge because we don't have any experience with those particular appraisers.
Okay. Before you accept an appraisal, like Rob said, sometimes we're getting 20 or 30 orders a day, much more than we're able to do. And so what are the process you look at? What decisions do you go through to help you make that yes or no for the appraisal?
Honestly, I think Ron touched on that a little bit, but we, first and foremost, we do try to keep the relationships that we've had, for the past several years. I mean, that's kind of the first check mark on there. Secondly, we do look and see if it is a client that, is looking for, sustained relationship, or if this is something that they're, saying, because broadcast orders are kind of a new thing. And they come fancy. Like I was telling someone that one particular lender is now sending broadcast orders, and they put a little funny GIF with it. It says, help me. So they're getting more creative on it. But honestly, those are the ones, I'd probably get rid of first, because I realize they are broadcast. And then, secondly, we just try to take ones that can make us most efficient, and whether that be location or we're already going that way. Another good thing is that the lender allows us to use the people in our office. In other words, the appraisal doesn't just have to be done by Alan Gardiner; it can be done by someone else in our company. That's a big. We really try to take care of those lenders first, because that helps us to be more efficient, and it just helps get better service. And quite honestly, there's not an Alan Gardiner appraiser or another one from our office. The appraisals look very similar. They're all very uniform in that fact. So there's not a big difference there. Those are probably the main things.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of echo that. We've always been, I think all these panelists up here, including Mark, have been real relationship oriented. And we've been working with some of you guys for 20 years plus and hope to continue. So we try to take care of, the old saying, dance with the one that brought you there. We try to take care of our relationships first. And Alan makes a good point. It is very helpful to be able to reassign the appraiser within the firm. And I know it doesn't always fit into your operations, but that is pretty important to a firm of not being able to, want that particular appraiser perhaps to do that particular job. Just want to be efficient working that way.
All right, here's another question. We've all seen the crazy market, the price appreciation, buyers paying above list price. So what are you seeing as a typical market adjustment for DFW? And how are these adjustments supported in the report?
Most of ours have been positive.
He was a little slow catching on, but I think now he's making positive time adjustments.
Most of ours.
Were you making negative earlier in the year?
Am I there?
Yes, you're on.
You switch mics. I don't think there is a typical deal. I don't think there is a typical one for any particular area. I think each of us looks at the statistics involved in any one neighborhood or market in that regards. And there's different ways of looking at the market on it. You know, if you're in the upper end of the price range for the host city and it's within a neighborhood, do you use the general deal or do you narrow it down? It's certainly, we've certainly seen some areas where it's been 20%. I don't think that that is a norm for all areas. But then on the other side of that, we've seen some new construction that's been much higher than that. So we've seen a little bit of everything over that range.
There's you have some handouts on your table. There's about 3 of them that look kind of like this. It's a scatter graph. And I did just kind of just pick some 3 at random. There's one in Garland, kind of Fox and Jacobs type product, 1,400 to 52,000 square feet, built in the 70s. And then typical Lake Highlands neighborhood, this is built in the 70s and 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. And then one in West Plano, built in the 90s. And they all have 3 different curves. And this is something that's pretty easy to do, and we usually do them in our reports. And I think all of us up here do something like this. It may not be a graph, but we do some kind of analysis. We don't just pull a number out of the air. And just to illustrate the differences, the one in Garland, if you look at on the horizontal axis, look at August the 1st of 2020, which would be about a year ago. They were selling about 137 a foot, and now it's 159 a foot. And that's about a 29% increase, 21% increase over 1 year. And then you contrast that with the one in Lake Highlands. The numbers there went from 178 a foot to about 204 a foot, which is about 15%, so a little different there. And then in Collin County, up in Plano, I didn't write down the exact numbers there, but I just kind of eyeball those real quick. Looks like about 140 a foot to 180 a foot. And I think I calculated that last night to be about 26% on an annual basis. And when you get into that stratosphere, I don't know that we talk quite often, and we talked earlier in the year about this quite a bit. I don't know anyone's making 26% a year adjustments, but that's what the market's doing in some cases. So it's kind of, I was doing a divorce appraisal the other day, and I thought about putting the graph in there. I thought, well, if I put the graph in there, I better follow the graph, because one side's going to get the house and one side's going to have to buy the house. And someone's going to say, well, you got this graph in here showing 26% a year appreciation, but you didn't adjust that much. So I went ahead and got out on a limb and did it, but I didn't feel real comfortable, to be honest with you.
All right. Also, we have Case Shiller. Everybody sees the news publications, Case Shiller studies, and show the Dallas, Fort Worth, different areas going up at different rates. So we're back up, right? So one of the dilemmas that Jim's talking about is we can see 20% in the market, and the underwriters don't like it more than about 12%, 1% a month. And so when we write the reports, it winds up being a balance between what the market is, what we can support, and what we're going to believe.
And I think it's important to note too on that, Mark, that the linear, the appreciation that Jim's talking about there, it's not on a linear basis, obviously. I mean, you got ups and downs and cycles, and you've got, you know, ones that are just sitting on the edge of being too high or too low. So there's a lot of noise in there. So there is a lot of room for interpretation. Yes, and there's a lot of room for judgment. And I think it probably would be dangerous if you're saying, hey, I've got a match variance balance that shows 35% for the subdivision, which I've had. And, you know, and realtors show it, but it's only one sitting out there. So is there data out there? Yes, but you have to put some judgment to this.
Alan came up with a pretty good phrase when we were batting this around back in March or April when we first started catching this. It has to do, I don't know if you can state this from memory or not, but with sustainability of the market.
Sustainability of value. It's basically just it's a theory that further, it's not a theory, it's part of the appraisal. When we give an appraisal, the appraisal is as of that date. And one of the things that readers need to recognize is that there's a sustainability of value that's related to that value. That value is good for that date. And things could change one way or the other. And you know, we may find out information the next day that we change our mind. So, you know, granted, you're like, well, why we got to get the appraisal? Maybe a good question, I don't know. I guess you have to have a starting point, right? But I think it's a good theory if you're a user of an appraisal to understand that there's a lot of things that affect the market. And when we're trying to interpolate that, we have the data that we have as of that date. And things could be very different. That data changes the next day.
So in other words, real estate can go down, as some of us have seen. All right, another question for you guys. Along with the crazy buyers out there, the realtors have developed a contract addendum. They call it the appraisal addendum. And in that, they state that the buyer will guarantee to pay the difference between the contract price and the appraised value if the appraisal comes in low. So if the guy's bidding $50,000 above this price and the appraisal comes in at this price, he's going to pay the $50,000. And the question that always comes up says, does that make your job easy? You guys not have to work as hard because they got that addendum in there?
We put those in a different stack. You know, honestly, it's part of our job to analyze the contract. It's also part of our job to analyze all the contracts and the listings and everything that's about that property. So is it taken into consideration? I would have to say yes, it's taken into consideration. Does it change my value? Probably not. But it does, you know, just like also I'm asking that listing agent, well, how many offers did you have? We had 35. Okay. You know, what were those prices? Can you kind of share with it? You know, we had, you know, a majority of them around 350. We had, you know, a couple at 370, and we had this one at 395, and we're really happy. So, you know, that's information to take and consider.
I think that's pretty well accurate. Maybe try one.
Out of batteries, probably.
I think that's pretty well accurate. You definitely always look at that contract price and see if there's any data out there to support it. When there's not, you work a whole lot harder. If it turns out to be a situation where you have that appraisal addendum, that thing is shot up 20% above the last sale, you're probably not going to push it as hard knowing that you have that addendum back there. But again, that's probably one of those wild ones that's just way up at the upper end.
I think it's just part of the contract that you have to look at. And another thing, you didn't ask this, but we look at the real estate agents and was the buyer represented by an agent or was he not represented, he or she? Was it the same agent acting as an intermediary or were there actually two different agents? And so sometimes if there's, you know, the agents, when there's two agents involved, they tend to kind of be balance things out. And if anybody has an advantage, that usually is leveled out a little bit with two agents. So I think we look at that as well.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Whenever we see the property listed in MLS It's open exposure, that's a better indicator than if it's a for sale by owner. Sorry about that, it's FSBO, which is the old acronym for sale by owner. And you never know if they're working stuff under the table or the people are even knowledgeable. But, all right, leads us to the next question. If we come in low on the appraisal, what is the best way to submit a rebuttal? What data do you want to see, and how do you analyze it?
Hello? You know,
Or how do you handle rebuttals to appraisals? What kind of data do they need to present? What do you look at?
we look at whatever is presented, and it's not an automatic saying, hey, we're not going to change this. We already did all the work on it. We do try to look at what the information is there. We do also, and I think a lot of us do this, we'll send the listing agent an advance note and say, hey, if you got any information you want to share with me ahead of the process, please send me those comments, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't get as many rebuttals as we used to by doing it that way. But when we do try to take into consideration, especially in this market when some things never go through MLS. Even though they're semi-exposed to the market, they never are a recorded transaction, and that agent may have that, and we don't. Because the other thing is they may know something about some of the comps, like there are 25 dogs living in this house. Something along that line we did not realize.
Yeah, as a lender, we, at least in the appraisal management side of your.
Hello?
Why is yours so much better? We basically have a form that we require our LOs or the loan participants to fill out and give us pertinent information. What we don't want to see is, I'm sure you guys can agree with this, a CMA report from a realtor. That's just kind of a paintbrush bunch of information. Most likely, the CMA has a bunch of comps that are already in the report. We want to be respectful of the appraiser's time. And so we narrow it to 3 or 4 recent sales that are in the neighborhood that are specified in the appraisal report. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it seems to be a little bit more respectful when it's a structure as opposed to just throwing information at the appraiser.
Anything else? Okay. In regards to the market, it's been pretty crazy. Do you see it slowing any? What is your current prognosis for what the market is? And do you see anything in the future?
I think you have a bar chart like this on your table. This is a very, very simple metric that we use and have used for many, many years. We started out doing it for our retail clients. It's what we call a hotness factor. And it's simply the ratio of the pending contracts in an area to the total number of listings. So if the hotness factor is 60%, 60, that means that 60% of the inventory is pending. So what you've got in front of you there, that graph, it's a neighborhood in Plano in the $400,000 to $500,000 price range. And it's historical hotness factor going back to 2001. We've been doing it that long. So if you look at the light blue graphs there and look over to the left, you see that typically that hotness factor is in the 20 to 40% range. That's pretty normal. Typically around 25 to 30%. So in a balanced market, 25 to 30% of the inventory would be pending. The rest of it would be available. The red bars there start on a quarter by quarter basis, and I've colored them red starting at the pandemic. And you can see when the pandemic first started, that would be second quarter, beginning of the second quarter of 2020, so it'd be April 2020. Pretty much normal, about 32%, pretty little on the hot side, but pretty much normal. And then you can see it started climbing, and I think it got up to about 82% in the second quarter of 2021. And you can see, in the third quarter, starting third quarter, which would be July of this year, it dropped down to 70%, and now it's sitting at about 60%. So it's coming back down, it looks like, at least in this particular price range and area. But 60%, I'm telling you, is still, it's gone from white triple hot to red hot. It's still a hot market. And anytime you get over 50%, you're going to get multiple offers, you're going to get frustrated buyers, and you're going to get price appreciation. So if we start to see if that trend continues in the next few months and that hotness factor comes down, when it gets down to about, in the 40s, then we can look to have a little more balanced market, maybe we won't see that 26% appreciation that the grass is showing. But that's kind of I think that's the leading indicator of what's going to happen.
The only thing I would add, I think Jim's look at it, I think it's a great way to look at it. But, just talking to market participants, the agents, lenders, builders, I do think they're just in speaking, there is a slight tick down. That slight tick down is, I think Jim put it in a great way. It went from white hot to red hot. So, when does it change? That is a great question. I think Mark should answer that.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a seasonal slowdown, a little bit in activity, just a general situation that's always occurred. When that happened, I wouldn't be surprised if some people who had always wanted to sell their homes but were fearful of going someplace else, we don't see a little increase in inventory, because a little bit of those statistics are influenced by the amount of inventory that's out there on the market coming in. And gosh, I think we're still going to have incoming buyers. I still anticipate that. I don't see a major downturn in values just because so many of these properties seem to be selling with so much more money down. But I guess, just like everybody else knows, I think any big change will probably happen in the future.
We well said, Ron. All right. Okay, we're going to go with one more question up here. Then you guys warm up. We'll throw some questions to the panel. It says, what is the difference between a sales transaction and refis, and how do you approach them? Is one harder than the other?
I think we generally prefer sales. They like refunds.
It's easier to get the appointment on a sale transaction. You just go out there with a lockbox and go get it.
Obviously, the access is much easier to sell. Refinances they're a part of it, and it's obviously something that we have to deal with. But if you're talking about a strictly ease of feature, then yes, I think 90% of appraisers said they'd much rather do a sale than a refinance. But that being said, as far as the appraisal process itself, to me, I don't know if there's a difference between refi and sale.
Sometimes after you've done a refi that didn't meet expectations, you feel like the homeowner is so mad at you that they think your motto is, we're not happy until you're not happy.
Yes, sometimes from the appraiser perspective too, on a sale, you got something to shoot for. On the refinance, you're shooting in the dark. It's like the relocation appraisals we do too. You're shooting in the dark, and a lot of times you can see what they paid for it in the past. Everybody has their own expectations, and generally the refinance people are disappointed.
I will say, Mark, I tell some people in our office that, because, they're like, I say, hey, our clients are really friendly right now and everything like that, but wait till this market starts turning and we start getting those refis, and all of a sudden no one's expectations are met, and you're the bad guy. Like, that will come, so just be there.
All right. Okay, questions from the audience? Nick?
Yeah, it's obviously been very busy for your groups, and Rob, you can answer this too from the lender side. Supply and demand, how do you set pricing? What is the best way for a lender to properly compensate y'all? And because we've seen, the normal, and then we've seen the extraordinary, and rush fees and all that kind of stuff. I'm just curious how y'all look at that, feel about it.
Go ahead, Ron.
Got 4-letter word more seems to be.
I'm looking for a number.
Yeah. I do think it depends on the relationship you have with that particular appraiser. And from that point on, the appraisal, the way we're bidding now, is going to depend on the amount of time we have to put into it. We can get a $10 million home with a $5,000 fee, and we'd much rather do a bunch of smaller ones, just because that knocks you out of taking other work from other regular clients, et cetera, et cetera. It sounds like a great fee that's way up there, but it may in the long run not be what you really need.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I'd add is, sometimes too, because I get clients all the time say, hey, just please bid. And I'm like, okay. And sometimes we get those. But it's about supply and demand. And, if I'm bidding on a hard property, and I'm realizing, hey, the only way I'm gonna get this done is I'm working on Saturday morning, then, that's how I did it. So I think a lot of that plays into demand, and that's going to change at some point. I do feel, and maybe a little self-serving, but I do feel that the fees are kind of on average getting back up to where they're more sustainable for us as a company to pay appraisers and get them excited about paying appraisers. So I do feel that just with all the increases and the demands on the appraisal and everything, that the fees are getting back to the point that's helpful for training new appraisers.
And I think that all of us up here have been called on by more individuals wanting to get into the appraisal deal than we probably have in the last 5 or 6 years before. And that's because the fees are a little more at a sustainable level where they can actually get 3 meals a day.
I would agree. I think some of the fee question gets back to who the client is and what their expectations are. There's always been, as long as I've been in this business, there's been a hassle fee for a difficult client. So if the lender has she's an appraisal management company that we don't have a relationship, it's probably no fee is really going to be acceptable in that instance. Contrast that with a regular client who is managing their own panel, maybe has an appraiser like Rob, Jack with Prosperity. Yeah, I mean, if it's somebody that understands what we do and not going to pick it apart. If there's something they need to talk about, that's fine. We're always open to that, but none of us like to be nitpicked about our appraisals, and that enters into the fee as well, I think.
That makes me think of the portal also and how we deliver and communicate. I mean, I'll be honest, there's some portals that are very difficult to do. And we raise the fees for this because it's a time thing. So yeah, that's another part of it. Portal being like, I apologize, Mercury, Appraisal Board, Agora, the ways that we communicate with the lender.
I think playing into that portal too, some of them want to, as soon as we get the order, they want us to set an appointment and let them know when the appointment is. Of course, what LO would not want to know that information, but it just does not fit into our workflow very well at all to be able to have to go set an appointment, the day or the next day after we get the appraisal.
Well, speaking of portals, like I'm saying, Appraisal Port and Mercury have been the 2 popular ones recently, but it seems like, gosh, out of the woodwork, everybody's come up with their own portals. Encore's got one, Citibank came up with one, and all of a sudden, everybody's got their own portals and their own different fee structures for managing stuff, the portals. In other words, they make us pay to get this information back and forth to them. And when we were in Appraisal Port and Mercury, we may have half a dozen clients in each one of those. And so we see the messages come through, the orders come through. And we have one lender out here with one portal. We're getting so many emails through that if it doesn't come through, we're not checking that portal for work. They get overlooked, and it's sad because some of them are good clients. Yes.
I hear a lot of discussion about a good client as opposed to a problem or, the pain client. What makes a good client?
Question is, what makes a good client?
In your opinion, as an appraiser?
A good client. One, I'll tell you one of the top things is having someone like Jim said, someone communicate that has that experience, that knows the appraisal talk. I mean, honestly, that is worth gold to me, because at that point, if we do run into an issue, I've got someone that I can talk to that understands my restrictions and stuff. That would be the top thing. Next, to me, would be communication, how I communicate with that client. Is it easy? Can I do it from my vehicle, on a simple app? It's really about then the last thing is the fewer number of check boxes that client has. In other words, Alan didn't do this, even though I don't have to do that for every property type, but they have it on their checkbox that needs to happen. You know what I'm saying? Those are the top three.
I think Alan's totally correct. Having somebody to talk to. Well, first of all, I think all y'all are really good.
If you're in this room, you're probably not really, that's true.
It really is. And having somebody to talk to whenever there's a problem, that is huge. I mean, you gotta realize appraisers are lonely people. We don't have anybody to call back and say, hey, we can't get hold of this number. We have to email it to somebody, check emails, or whatever it is. It's good to have a Rob. Well, even a Rob. I agree with what Alan said. And, mostly as opposed to in the past, timely payment is not a problem. Almost everyone is, compared to 10 years ago, generally get paid. And realistic expectations. And not every order is a rush.
Yes.
I know you all use Mercury for obvious reason. Do you take advantage of the mobile app
On Mercury?
on Mercury?
I do, yes.
And I don't, we have an admin that kind of handles all that, so I don't even know what you're talking about.
We don't need it.
I will say Mercury's mobile app's probably the best one. Even though I may not like their owner.
Is that more for the mobile app, is it more for a one-man show, or as opposed to a bigger office?
No, actually, I think it's more, in my opinion, Mercury's better for a bigger office. I mean, because you have the ability to see I can see everyone's appraisal in my office. I have the contact, whatever the lender put in for my contact information, I have that in my hands. I have the contracts in my hands. I can put that I've inspected the property, I've scheduled the property, I can do all those things from that mobile app. And so, and a lot of them, they're not at that ease, and especially on the communication side. The only thing I don't, some people on Mercury choose the automated, where you have to choose what they say. In other words, they have canned statements that you have to choose, and those never work out because there's never an exact scenario. Hey, this is what's happening.
Yes, Sheree.
Speaking of, the portals and so forth, and you mentioned there are a lot of new ones out there. If one of the new guys approaches y'all and you don't know anything about them, do you take them on? Do you provide the information to them to put you on their list, or do you kind of pick and choose on that? That's a hard question.
Well, I don't think there's one standard answer for that. I think it very definitely depends on the approach. Where there was a home client that we knew that moved to a new situation on it, and we very definitely take it in. It takes a lot of time to provide sample appraisals and all that kind of stuff. And my staff hates it right now. Anytime we ask them to do that, even though we have it fairly easily. So I don't think there's an absolute answer to that.
Yeah, if it just comes out of the blue, probably no. But if it's a client that is going through that portal, it's different, of course.
I think mostly as appraisers, we realize we're in a very, very fortunate time, at this particular point in time, being so busy. I don't think anyone could envision being this busy with COVID and everything else happening, in the whole industry as well. And, you know, you don't want to burn any bridges, but you can also burn bridges by taking on too much work.
Let's do Kyle.
Well, first of all, guys, I want to tell you, y'all have just been such a blessing to the industry. I'm thinking about 18 months ago, Nick and I sat around when the pandemic came out, we go, we're not going to, this industry is just going to flatten out. We're not going to have anybody go out and spec properties. There's nobody going to go crazy right now, this, and this, and this. And the resiliency y'all have shown to do what you do has been incredible. It's really helped us. Thank you very much. Talk a little bit about, speaking of the pandemic, some of the features in homes are pretty obvious that are hot right now, bigger offices, you know, people not necessarily have to be close to downtown and things like that. What are some of the things that may not be so obvious that you're seeing really rise in value pops that may not be so, you know, pandemic obvious? Or if any.
Give Rob the microphone.
An active listing. You know, you mentioned a couple there for sure. You know, I do think we're seeing the ability to have a study or two studies, even to be honest, as being something that's more desirable. The outdoor living areas are still, you know, those things are going crazy. I used to as a $5,000 to $10,000 deal. Now you're talking $50,000 to $70,000 on a lot of them. So, I don't know if y'all think of anything else.
I kind of agree with what Alan said. You know, right now, a listing out there and being able to get a house is much more important than the features. But the two studies are one we see a lot on somebody doing a rehab job in the outdoor. You see more, I think, some of these things coming through on rehabs than you actually see in the market right now, because builders can sell anything they get on the ground.
I have a question for you. I'll turn the table up. Earlier, we were talking about rebuttals, and somebody said, well, what about a non-MLS transaction? So we didn't really follow up on that, but I'm wondering, what do you require on a non-MLS? First of all, will you use one? And then will you require it? And are there some shortcomings or any reason not to use it? Or could you just talk about that a little bit?
Okay, what the question is, when you get a comparable, the lenders like for it to be published so they can see it and verify it. A lot of lenders have their staff appraisers, like Rob, which will look it up, look at pictures of it, make sure we're doing a good job. If one comes out of the woodwork, a builder sale or for sale by owner, then we can use it, but it's not very strong because we don't know what the exposure was. We don't really know what the parties' motives were. It could be a family transaction at a high price or a low price. And so it's really hard to verify. But we do need a copy of the HUD closing statement if we will even consider it. We didn't make sure because back when the laws changed around 2010, you know, breaking needs to have that HUD closing statement as a verification of a price. And getting those is even harder, especially when it's your neighbor or the appraisal for your refinance and the guy's telling you about his neighbor that sold. Nobody's going to give you that information if you call them up. So generally, we don't use them, and they're not worth the time to dig up if the market doesn't support it, and if there's only one indicator that's going to hang your hat on, and it's the private one, well, we can't rely on it.
Yeah, I want to second that. Sometimes we'll get a rebuttal or value reconsideration where, well, this realtor gave me this sale that just happens right around the corner, and it's either one of the two things. It's a for sale by owner, or it's sold 2 days after the effective date of the appraisal. Both of those are challenges for the appraiser. Number one, you can't use a sale that happened after the effective date of the appraisal, meaning when the appraiser walked across the threshold of the house, that's the effective date. And when you don't have any real document that It's the HUD, it used to be the HUD one, now I think it's the know before you vote. If you're not able to provide that, then the appraiser can't really use it. That's kind of how we handle it.
All right, I'm gonna go back to Kyle's question earlier, to put another spin on this, about what makes a house attractive and how to say in listings. We're all discussing here at dinner that they'll have a broker's license, and we've also real estate. This summer, my son decided he wanted to buy his first house, so I'm the broker of the transaction. He's looking around all through Coppell, Carrollton, all through the areas, and I'm up looking in the Colony because they had something for sale. And in relative terms, there would be 5 listings for sale, and for the year, there would be 500 transactions sold and closed. So we're looking at a 1% factor during part of the peak of the market. And that's what made the house market crazy. That's why the buyers were fighting over them, because you got a 1% of the market is up for sale. You got to take it. And the prices would come in low, and the people would look at it and say, well, what's your alternative? Well, the next one over here is 20, 30,000 more. So you just pay the difference. 1 or 2 more questions. Yes.
Yeah, what about pools these days? It used to be they depreciate very quickly. Today it's in high demand. Are they holding their value?
As long as they hold water.
I have a free one if anybody wants one. They can have mine.
Yeah, I definitely think they do. And, you know, and the cost of them is unbelievable right now. So they tend to bring a lot of value in the right neighborhoods. And there's some neighborhoods that still may not demand that just because of lot sizes or demographics or whatever. For the most part, I would say yes.
Yeah, when I first got into business, it seemed like pools, the common answer there was that they either had half their cost or $20,000. And believe it or not, those 2 metrics are still going around the real estate. You guys, a lot of real estate agents, and that's what they'll say. But you can't put a pool in nowadays for much less than $50,000. And yeah, I'm just talking about a cheapie. But you know, pools eventually they have negative value. You know, you get an old pool and plain old built, it was put in the 70s or early 80s, and you know, if it hadn't been maintained, you know, it's probably got a minus $10,000 value. So they can go from almost full cost to negative value. So they're somewhat in between, depending on how old it is and the kind of features it has, and if it's, you know, that old saying, look around, look around, look around. If you look around and you don't see what you have, you probably don't have value. But if you see a lot of tools, then, you know, that's obviously something people want. So you're going to get, you know, a fair percentage of your purchase price back out on it, assuming it's fairly new.
But the fact that new pools cost so much to add has driven up the price of contributory value to some of the old ones. And then the real old ones, you can, if you're a fisherman, you can always minnows and stuff.
A question, we talked about the outdoor living and how does that work as far as you got the kitchen and the fireplace and all the things that go along with it? Is that kind of apply the same with those items in the backyard versus a pool, or?
It's pretty subjective, and it really depends on a lot of what data you can collect in the comps, because and we look at aerials, we look at the MLS photos, and, you know, look at a lot of things just to try to get an idea, because, you know, they're all sold outdoors living area, best place ever, you know, and it's a covered patio, right? So it's a nice covered patio, but it's probably not the thing that someone put $60,000 into. It's hard.
I think the contributory value of a lot of those is very similar on a pool, 50% range or whatever. And some of them are a whole lot more valuable to the homeowner than they are to the purchaser.
Really?
There's a lot of originality into most of them. I mean, that's a very good point.
All right. 1 more question.
We got plenty of time, Mark.
We got plenty of time?
We got 15 minutes. And if any virtual attendees have questions, y'all can send them in too.
Okay.
Nothing yet.
Back maybe they've got 20, I'll get you here in a second.
Yeah, so with the market being so high, the properties being gobbled up at list price or higher, do you guys still adjust for condition, like deferred maintenance and all that, or is it gone away since people are willing to pay any amount for any condition of the property?
No, we still did adjust, but you bring up a good point. I mean, appraising got a little trickier because there are so few listings that all of a sudden you see kind of the dog that's getting the first in price and getting the high bids. So there's a lot of times that, there's a reality check that makes it difficult. The appraiser has to dig harder and say, okay, here's 3 weeks sales, but they're really different than me. So I'm not sure those are my best sellers.
I think that's a very good point, because things that we've always looked at as being a real big negative, like backing to a major road or backing to a highline easement, they fall way down on the list when somebody's looking for a house and there's only 2 to choose from. So, good point. That is very definitely, condition is still a factor, but it may not be quite as much as it was before. I think most relocation companies are encouraging their homeowners not to improve their home. Just put it back on the market and sell it as is they're being transferred. And I think that's kind of indication that, hey, the next purchaser may want to do that, so you may not get the money back from doing that particular minor upgrade to what it was.
Still needs to be habitable.
Most of them do still like the roof and the foundation.
Rob, anything on that?
Sorry. No.
Maybe?
Did we have any?
Nothing.
Okay.
Okay, virtual guys, ask some questions.
I just, this question is for Ron. Thank you, I'm gonna call him now Even Rob. This question is for Even Rob. As the ones that they speak to, and as kind of the intermediary between the LOs or the loan participants on the lender side and the appraisers, can you name a particular area that's probably most likely the point at which the misunderstanding comes in, and is that, or communication breaks down, and is that area more emotional, is it logistical, or is it?
Thanks for that, Amy. Yeah, I think that at lenders, I think we have to really pay attention to the appraiser's typical year, really feast or famine, and during the spring and summer months, they're going. And then come fall, it's like, okay, you can take a breath. Well, it's been 2 years of that feast or famine, and or that feast, and the frustrations that what I am experiencing is the production staff not understanding that, or agreeing to very quick close dates that are starting from the real estate agents and the contracts, not considering that the appraisers have been working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, more, for 2 years, and they've got decent bank accounts now. They're doing pretty well, and they want to go see their daughters or granddaughters' soccer games. The wives are saying, "Hey, I want to take a 3-day weekend. You haven't been home on Saturday in 2 years," and so the appraisers are saying, "Hey, I'm going to pause on accepting all 30 of these orders that came in today because I want to be home." And the LOs, the production staff are like, "Why can we not get this appraisal back in 5 days?" Well, it's a challenge. And that's probably my biggest conflict. You guys just need to not have family time. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. I just wondered if it was more, are you dealing, is the area of misunderstanding or the area of communication breakdown related more to high emotion on either side, related to getting the loan closed and defensive schedule or defensive product churn out or whatever, or is it actually based in something, you get 2-year rebuttals where the prices are harder or something like that, you know?
At least for me, it's not community levels that I know of. It's more realistic expectations, setting that on the front end with agents, lenders, and working with the appraisers to maybe increase fee a little bit to entice them, but yeah, that's about it.
Yes.
And just a quick question. What do you all see as the future for appraisals? I mean, we keep hearing about appraiser shortages. You say you're starting to see some new blood in there. Where do you think that's going right now?
You know, Fannie Mae, I think, has been trying to do away with the appraisal process for 20, 30 years. And I think they will continue to do that to a certain extent. So looking at that, I cannot see the future, so I'll leave it out.
You know, I've gotten that question from trainees that we hired. I mean, so I've been doing it since 91. I think Ron since 51. So.
Me in Columbus.
You know, my answer is, honestly, I remember one time, and because I've been hearing that since I took my job in 1991, I gotta be honest. And I remember one time I had nothing to do. I went to the movie theater. And literally, that was 1993. That's literally the last time I remember having nothing to do. So I think there's always going to be a need for appraisals. Now, is it going to change? It's absolutely going to change. I've been on a lot of committees with the very bifurcated appraisals. And, I'm not a big fan of sitting on a send someone else out to see the property and have the appraiser sit in his cube and type the value. I think that diminishes the value of our appraisal. Just because, at least most knowledge I get is when I'm out in the field. Because I drive by and it's like, oh wow, you know, man, where'd that Kroger go? There's totally a retail center there, you know. So there's things you learn when you're out and about. So I do think there's going to be a new form come out. I mean, it's way too far in advance. It's going to happen, and it's kind of an interactive form. And so basically, if the appraiser says yes, there's external obsolescence, then boom, here comes 3 other questions you have to answer. Okay, so there's some thing, and they're talking to that we're directly going to have to do that to Fannie Mae directly on the website. So there's definitely changes coming up to the appraiser industry. I'm kind of an optimist, but I think we're going to be around. I don't think the shortage. I think that's used to. I don't think there's a shortage. I mean, there's a shortage right now, but overall, I don't think it's like we're all dying off anymore. So.
Yeah, the hard deal. Yeah. You know, the hard deal on training appraisers on my end, and I always personally enjoy training people because I could never pay enough to get somebody that had experience to do it. We would go through probably 5 trainees to get one. And part of that was because, you know, you have to have an aptitude for whatever job you take. And so many of them would look good on coming in, but then they wouldn't be at the end. And it takes a particular scenario financially to get into appraisal the first 2 or 3 years. And that means bare minimum. This recent boom has changed that a little bit. So I think Alan's taken on some trainees, and I don't know if Jim knows, or, you know, Mark took up one. But anyway, I think there's been more trainees getting into the business. So I don't think there's a shortage out there that may not like it.
There's a shortage of good appraisers, but that's a byproduct of them not being trained properly.
Well, I think there will always be basically what I've said the last time I was up here, 3 types of appraisers out there. Those that are good with numbers and those that aren't.
Any other questions? No, nothing.
Anybody else? That's probably a good note to drop it on, right? Drop it.
You're taking it,
Thank you, guys. So,
y'all hear me?
Yes.
Is this one not working?
I think it's working.
Okay, y'all are just the best of the best, cream of the crop, so we appreciate you taking the time, and I know some people were upset that we got you out of the field to come and speak to us today, but we really appreciate it. I had a brief moment in my life recently that I did work for an appraisal management group, and it was quite the experience, and I appreciate so much what y'all do, especially since I'm on the origination side. So when you see my name somewhere, I should remember that, okay? No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. But thank you again so much. Next month, we will have a meeting here unless COVID prevents us from doing so. We're going to continue on month to month now. And the topic will be fair lending and what's going on in that world. And we don't have all of our speakers nailed down yet, but it should be very interesting. Thank you so much.